Why do your feet stick to the ground, but your head instead floats like a balloon? We make no accidental sound. Has your mind resigned? Spit the truth. Look at these cats, they run the town. Try to fade it,
Hey, welcome to North Point. So glad you're here. Would you stand and join us? Come on, let's worship. Your word is a lamp unto my feet. Your way is the only way for me. It's a narrow road that leads to life, but I want to be on. It's a narrow road, but the mercy's wide, 'cause you're good on your promise. I'll take you at your word. If you said it, I'll believe it. I've seen how good it works. If you started, you'll complete it. I'll take you at your word. You spoke, and the chaos fell in line. Oh, I know, 'cause I've seen it in my life. It's a narrow road that leads to life, but I wanna be on it. It's a narrow road and the tide is high, but you're part of the water. I'll take you at your word. If you said it, I believe it. I've seen how good
Well, good morning. Look at all the red shirts, jerseys. I'm so happy to see that. And if you're a Niners fan, this is a safe place for you too. We just hope that you find Jesus while you're here. My name is Preston, and it's going to be a great Sunday. I want to talk to you real quick about this song we're going into. It's a new song. It's called Living God. And this song has a theme throughout it that the best way to understand the theme is like to go back to kind of an old story. So in the book of Acts, there's a guy named Paul. Paul is a major character in the New Testament, and he had a pretty radical experience when it comes to how did he start following Jesus. It says Paul is walking around and he sees a bunch of idols. This is really important. He sees these idols and his heart's distressed because he's got this message he wants to tell people about, that there's a God that loves them and there's one God, and in everyone's search for God, they can actually have a relationship with this one God. So he sees all these idols. And the way that it was back then was in the culture, they would have an idol for almost everything just to have their bases covered. So it was like this. This idol would be for prosperity over land, and so they'd worship that idol, and then this idol would be prosperity over family. So they just have idols for every different area where they wanted to prosper. And there was one statue that had an inscription, more like a stone. It had an inscription that said, "To an unknown God." So they're trying to make sure, hey, if we missed a God in the process of our worship, we do have this unknown God that's like going to cover everything. And Paul, it says in the story, his heart was broken. And he says, I want to talk to you about the unknown God. So Paul doesn't go and tear down all their idols and condemn them. He just focuses in on the fact that there's a God they don't know that's truly alive, that if they get that, it's going to outdo all of the other things they worship. So he starts telling them, there's a God that you don't know, and the God is alive, and the God has shown himself to us in the person of Jesus. And perhaps you've heard the story of Jesus. He goes on, and even says, some people thought that he was making up a false God. And Paul's telling them, there's a living God that you can have a relationship with. And in your pursuit of just trying to have hope in the wrong things, there is a God that can give you hope, not just in this life forever. So he goes on and on and on. It's what this song's about. This song is about a living God. Listen, we have idols, we all do. And you're like, no, we don't. I mean, maybe today their names are the Chiefs. I don't know. But we all have places we put our hope. We do. It could be money. It could be the next job. It could be kids. It could be, think about it. We have places we put our hope. And we're like, when that happens, whoa, I'll finally feel alive. And the message of the song is, God, you're the living God. I can put my hope in you, and no matter what happens today, no matter what happens tomorrow, no matter what happens in like the doctor's office, no matter what happens on the phone call, the living God is alive and well and wants a relationship with us. So I'd encourage you, sing these lyrics as if they are true. Sometimes we repeat lyrics for that very reason, just to help us, okay, what if this is true? And then see what happens. God, we're grateful for moments like this, and we just pray from a heart that is open, that people here who would say, you are an unknown God, that, hey, we don't even know you, that you would show yourself to be true and to be loving and to be everything you've showed us in Jesus. And to those, God, who say that they have had a relationship with you, let it be a moment where all other idols are pushed aside. In Jesus' name, amen.
Of the living God, I take it. The goodness of your love, I lean in. Closer to my Father's heart, I trust. trust in who you say you are. You are alive, living and breathing here in this place, speaking and healing. Your fullness and glory is right here before me. You're the living God, the living God. You're the living God.
daily praises rise. Day and night, night and daily praises rise. Day and night, night and daily praises rise. We believe day and night, night and daily praises rise. 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 You're worthy of it all. You're worthy of it all. It's who you are. For from you are all things, and to you are all things. Yes, you deserve the glory. You're worthy of it all. You're worthy of it all. For from you are all things, and to you are all things. You deserve the glory.
Okay, so I'm on the side of the stage singing with you. I mean, good news is you can't hear me, but I'm singing with you. And I'm thinking of those times like on the lake or in the ocean, or I've not been, but people tell me the Grand Canyon, but where you're just in awe. You're like, wow, right? I mean, the screen showing you these sunrises and these clouds. What's amazing about all of this is in those moments, those amazing moments where time stands still, creation's only reflecting the beauty and goodness of God. This just reflecting. It's like everything God has done is good. That's how the whole story starts. And God called it good, and God called it good. And then God created you and called it good. And that God, the God who's worthy of all of this, says, I want a relationship with you. And if you're here and you're like, that's scary, He is good. And those moments in creation that make you be in awe and wonder are reflecting of His beauty and His goodness. It's amazing. When we set our eyes, we set our minds on Him, it just does something. Takes it off of our current circumstance, puts it on God. It's very not just helpful, like it just does something to us. It makes us think, maybe I'm supposed to do this more often. So I want to say thanks for singing. I hope that you were encouraged, and we're going to continue. We're going to have a great morning. And yes, I'm not a prophet or anything, but we're going to have a great day, Chiefs fans. So if you want to take a seat, you go ahead and take a seat. We're going to continue in this series called Relatable. We're talking about how do we have the best relationships possible. And there's a good message today about conflict. So, if you're sitting next to your spouse, give them a little nudge right there. Let's watch this video, and we'll continue with the morning.
Oh my gosh. What is something that gets under my skin?
Oh my gosh, where do I start?
Sydney will take forever to get ready.
She is the loudest cereal eater in the world.
Kind of in a similar note, he always leaves his socks right in front of the door.
His car is honestly always trashed.
Trashed?
Probably, I mean, there's a lot. He basically refuses to put the dishes in the dishwasher.
I love Genesis' heart. She cares more about everything than anybody.
I love how special Terrell makes people feel.
Oh man, she's good at everything. I mean, everything she takes on, she's really good at.
It's kind of the same thing. He's got a really great heart. He might roast somebody, but it's all in love. So maybe I should have answered this in what annoys me the most, and also what I love about him the most is his stability. He is always right here, and I'm just a very passionate person.
Well, good morning. Welcome to North Point. We're so glad you're here with us today. Hey, if we haven't met yet, my name is John. I help out as the campus pastor here at our Springfield location. And as you know, Wednesday is a big day. Anybody got that marked on your calendar? Valentine's Day. Is Valentine's, seriously? Okay, Valentine's Day, and I cannot wait to see what my wife gets me. I'm excited. And I will say this. If Wednesday comes and goes and you don't get any chocolates or candies or cards, we are just going to assume that your secret admirer is taking the secret part very seriously, and you are still very loved. And I think Miley Cyrus said something about being able to buy your own flowers anyway, so that's permission to do that. But I want to take a moment. I want to welcome our campuses, Springfield. You're looking good. Smelling good too. And then Nixa, welcome. I can't see you, but Alvarez has told me you're looking good. And of course, our Republic campus, my old stomping grounds. I love Republic. And the Dream Center campus, which is probably enjoying a great breakfast right now. And I don't want to forget anyone watching online. I'm sure you've got the 7-layer dip in the oven ready for the party tonight. So, of course, I cannot forget, we got a big game tonight. Of course, Super Bowl Sunday, and a special day requires a special shirt. And I don't know if you can see this or not, but no, this is not Jeremy Johnson with a mustache. This is, of course, Coach Andy Reid with the epic snot stash. And if you don't get that cultural reference, you don't watch football, just Google what happens if you blow your nose in negative 20-degree weather, and this will probably pop up. But I promise I'm not going to spend all day talking about the Super Bowl. Not because we're not in church. I just don't want to jinx anything. But I will say, you got to fight for your right to party. Go Chiefs. So that's all I'm going to say. But hey, we are in a series. We're in a series talking about relationships, relate-able. How are we able to relate to those around us? How can we have the best relationships with those around us? And last week, we kicked off the series talking about one relationship that impacts all of our other relationships. And beyond popular belief, that is not your relationship with your wife. Although, happy wife, happy life. And I believe that. But this is that relationship you have with God. How does that impact all of your other relationships? And how you look at that, what role he plays will make an impact. Well, and if you missed that, I'd encourage you to watch on the app, North Point Mo. You can check out last week's message, because really today we're just going to build on that as we talk about conflict. Yes, that's exciting, huh? Anybody excited? I love talking about conflict. And here's the deal. You do not have to look far to endure some conflict. Like you may, because of some things you said on the way in, you may have some conflict on the way out of here. Like conflict has this way of finding us. We don't need to go looking for it. If you got kids, like that's conflict, all right? You just know it. You got kids that you're like, don't eat that, don't do that. Get that out of your nose. Like all the time, conflict. Some of you had some conflict on your way in today, and you had to have a little come to Jesus moment with your little ones. And you're like, seriously, do not repeat those words in church, and you stop crying, and you come in your matching jerseys. Happy Super Bowl. So, and you can see the puffy red eyes, and I can make fun of it because we've been there. Yeah, and I've got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and my 5-year-old, I mean, he forgets where he puts his shoes 5 minutes ago, but he remembers 6 Wednesdays ago at 2:46 p.m. I said we might have ice cream after work, and so he's never forgotten that. So we got that's fun. That is fun. And here's the deal: if you work a job, you probably got some conflict. I got some stats here. It says that 85% of people say they've experienced conflict at work. And the other 15% are liars. And we've all experienced conflict. Seriously. In fact, one of the other stats says the average company spends 5 hours a week resolving conflict. 5 hours a week. Like, you know how many hours a year that is? I didn't do the math. I don't know, but I think some of you might know. Some of you did it. I'm proud of you. You know those hours. But that's a lot of time. And you get it, because we go to work and we deal with somebody who's like, they're different than you, and they think differently than you, and they have different values than you, and they express those values differently than you, and they're just so different. And isn't that so annoying? And then somebody gets hired and they're so similar to you and you're like, man, they're annoying. So it's like, you just can't win. Conflict finds you. If you're married, do I even need to give examples? Like, no, exactly. It's like you just chew loudly and leave the toilet seat up once. A conflict finds you. In fact, there's whole web pages dedicated to it, like just priming the pump if you need a good fight. Okay, and you can use this on your significant other if you're just like, man, we need some good conflict. We just got to hash it out. And so I'll let you can use these questions. Men, ask your girl if you're the charming one or the funny one. And if she doesn't say both, I think you should fight. Ladies, ask your man when he was born. And if he doesn't say the day he met you because that's the day his life began, I think you should fight. Men, ask your girl what her dream was last night, and if she doesn't say, I stopped dreaming because my dreams came true the day I met you, I think you should fight. Last one. Ladies, ask your man what his most prized possession is. And if he says you, remind him he doesn't own you, and I think you should fight, all right? Like, it is not hard to find some conflict, and then if none of that works, just fold the laundry wrong, okay? But like, all of us, even if all our relationships are just peachy and nice, we can hop on social media for 5 minutes and we can find something that stirs us up. And when I think about conflict, here's what I'm tempted to think. I'm tempted to think that a lot of the conflict in my life is because of you. Like, it's because of you all. It's because like you like someone you said that and you did that and you treated me this way and you provoked me in this way and you're a Raiders fan and like I can think of a lot of things that I'm like, you are the reason I experience conflict. But the more that I think about conflict, the more that I'm reminded, I think a lot of the unresolved conflict in my life is because of me. It is me. It's I wanted to prove a point, and I wanted to be right, and I wanted to look wise, and I wanted to make sure that you understood my perspective, and I didn't choose to understand your, and I'm like, a lot of it is me. A lot of it's me. And so today, as we talk about conflict, here's one of the things I want you to understand is that we hold the keys to deep, healthy relationships in our lives. And it's not somebody else. It's not, man, if they'd make the first move, it's us. We hold those keys. Because if you really think about it, here's what I want you to think. Like, let's do a quick experiment. Think about some of the healthiest, deepest relationships that you have. Some of the best relationships you have. Think about it. Think about that person. My guess is that you probably had to navigate some conflict. Like, you probably had some uncomfortable moments, but you navigated them and you're like, I'm willing to be uncomfortable because I care about you, and you walk through it, and now your relationship is stronger because of it. Now think about some of the worst relationships you have. Think about that person that you like, you know, you're just, I don't talk to them. I intentionally don't like their photos on Instagram, and they know it. And I'm like, okay, when you think about those relationships, my guess is that you had some conflict and you didn't navigate it as well as you'd hoped. And so today, here's what I want you to know. You hold the keys. You hold the keys to healthy relationships in your life. And that's what I want you to understand. Okay, all of us. Every time that we encounter conflict, we have an opportunity. And the opportunity is to form a deeper, healthier relationship. And some of you know this. Some of you, you've been avoiding conflict. Like some of you, if you do not figure out how to navigate conflict well today, well, it's actually gonna have a pretty big impact on your life. Maybe you're in a relationship and you just like butt heads and you cannot figure out how to communicate effectively, and you start name calling, you start talking, it's just like that it goes downhill after that, and you just like, seriously, you cannot talk to each other appropriately, and it's affecting your relationship. If you do not figure it out, like it may be over. Maybe others of you have a family and you know everything is perfect on the outside, but on the inside you know there's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of things unsaid. And you don't honestly want to say them because you do not know how it's going to go. And if it doesn't go well, then you don't know if you want to live with that. But I don't know, sometimes the pain of not saying something is worse than the pain of saying something. And so you're trying to figure out, and you're like, I know we have this conflict, I just don't know how to navigate it well. Maybe you have friends, but maybe you wouldn't even call them friends. Maybe they're more like acquaintances because you've never actually gone deep with them. And then maybe you try to go deep, but you do not know how to have a relationship where they know you and you know them, and you just feel like all you do is do things together, but you don't actually have any depth in that relationship. And you're like, is it even worth it? Maybe some of you are thinking about leaving your career because you cannot work with the people that you're working with. You can't get along with them. And it's now this unhealthy environment. You don't know how to approach, and you're like, maybe it's just easier if I leave and I go try to do something else, even though I like this place, but I just cannot get along with the people I'm doing it with. For some of you, this is important. How you navigate conflict today, here's what I want us to see. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to have deeper, healthier relationships. And when I think about it, why do we have conflict? One of the first things I wrote down is this. Why do we have conflict? Well, we as humans, we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. Why do we have conflict? We do not see things as they are. We see things as we are. And you can think about that a couple different ways. One, you could think about it as like we do not see things as they are. Like we do not see things as the other person is. We don't see their intentions. We don't see their experiences. We don't see their point of view because we can only see things as we are. Or you could think about it this way. We don't see things as they actually are. We don't. We only see things through our perspective, our point of view, our experience. We judge people off our intentions. We can only see one side of the story. And like when you think about it, like think about our justice system, right? Like we have somebody who goes to court and they state their side of the story, and the judge doesn't make a ruling right then. He's like, okay, now the defense gets a chance to talk, and they say their side of the story, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, you left out some pretty important details. Like they're like this, okay, each of you have your side, and there's probably even a spot in the middle that it lands. That's what I've noticed. For a lot of us, we do not see things as they are. We see things as we are, and we do not see the full story. And so when it comes to conflict, what would it look like to try to see the other side of the story? In fact, there's a famous quote by Abraham Lincoln, and I've never said these words. This is wild, but he says this. He says, I don't like that man. I have said those words, but I haven't said these next words, okay? He says, I don't like that man, therefore I must get to know him better. Like, what if we did that when we experience conflict? Because I gotta be honest, my normal approach is to go the other way. I'm like, okay, now we're just talking through email. Like if I have to talk to you and I'm CCing my boss on this, right? Like we do not naturally push into we're not like, man, I don't like that person. Let me take him out for lunch. We avoid them. We try to get them off the team. We try to figure out some sort of way to not have to navigate the conflict. But one of the things I want to talk about today is this thought of being like the bison. I don't know if you ever heard this. Anytime you're in conflict, be like the bison. Maybe Republic's heard this, all right? A lot of buffalo over there, all right? But what you do is the bison, this is interesting. They're the only type of animal that when a storm is coming, they instinctively turn toward the storm and they walk straight through it. Every other animal will see a storm coming, they sense it, they feel it, they turn, they start to go the other way, and what ends up happening is they end up staying in the storm longer because they ran from it. But the bison, they go straight through it. And when it comes to conflict, here's what I want us to think about. What would it look like to push in? That person at work, that coworker, whatever it is, right? That spouse, that family member, what would it look like to push into that relationship? How would we do that? How would we do that well? In fact, one of my favorite verses in Scripture is this verse in Ephesians. And it says this, when it talks about how to push into conflict. It says, be humble, be gentle, be patient. I could probably stop there. I don't even know if we need the full verse. But it's be humble, be gentle, be patient, tolerate one another in an atmosphere thick with love. That's just poetry to the ears. Make every effort to preserve the unity, right? Okay, turn toward the storm. Go straight into it. Make every effort to preserve the unity the Spirit's already created with peace binding you together. Humble, gentle, patient. Okay, what would that look like? What would that look like with that coworker that annoys you, that stole that promotion from you? humble, gentle, patient. They have the office that I should be having. Okay, humble, gentle, patient. And every time you talk to them, you're humble and you're gentle and you're patient. What would that look like with that neighbor that plays their music too loud and they kind of messed up your side of the fence? And you're like, tolerate them in an atmosphere thick with love. What would it look like for that roommate that doesn't do the dishes? Some of you, that's your husband, okay? What would it look like? Make every effort, preserve the unity. Okay, here we go. Bind together in peace. What would that, I think that our relationships would be quite a bit different if we practically did that today. And so what this is like, okay, how do we actually do that? How do I actually do that? One of the things I wrote down, this is kind of one of the first steps when it comes to conflict. I think it's helpful for you. Is that if you have a part in the conflict, then you have a part to own in the conflict. If you have a part in the conflict, then you have a part to own in the conflict. For some of you out here, maybe when I talk about conflict, somebody comes to your mind or a situation comes to your mind. And my question for you today would be, what percentage of the conflict can you own? And I've asked myself that question, and usually when it's my fault, I'll say something like 50%. I'm like, well, it's as much their fault as it is my fault. But, it's or maybe for some of you, you're like, it's really not my fault, but I guess I could own 10% of the conflict. I'm like, cool, own 100% of the 10%. Own your part of the conflict. And for some of you, that's not like you admitting that you're wrong. What it's doing is it's taking responsibility. You're owning it. Maybe in your marriage, you're like, I own 5% of the conflict. Cool. Own 100% of that 5%. Be the first one to call a counselor. With your kids, you're like, well, I own 2% of the conflict. It's mainly them. Great. You have to understand, they don't understand this world right now. They're young. They don't get it, right? They're not fully, they don't understand what's going on. They only know their experiences. Own 100% of the 2%. Make the first step. What would it look like to own your part of the conflict? I think it'd make a difference. And I've talked to a lot of people, and some people think, man, well, you just you don't know this person. You don't know my mother-in-law. You don't know this coworker. They're crazy. And I'm like, okay, are you a Christian? He's like, yeah, I'm a Christian. Okay, cool. So you believe in a virgin birth that gave way to Jesus, who was God in the flesh, who walked the earth, who healed people, who raised people from the dead, who then defeated death, ascended up into heaven, and now lives within you, but you don't think he can change the heart of your roommate? Pause for effect. It's I think he could. I think he could, right? What does it start with? Own your part of the conflict. Own it. And here's the deal. When we start to do that, because a lot of us think we just shouldn't have conflict, and that's what's better. It's no, actually, it's kind of like when you break metal and you weld it back together. It actually, now that metal is stronger. When you break a bone and then you set it, it actually grows back stronger. When you prune a bush, it actually grows back healthier. Some of these things we think avoiding conflict is the key. Walking into that conflict makes a massive impact, and owning your part of the conflict is one of the first steps. And once you own it, then anything can happen. You get in the conversation and some wild stuff may come out. And here's what I want to do. I want to give you some tools. When you're in that conversation, what do you do now? And what I've got is I've actually, full disclosure, these tools I'm about to give you, I didn't come up with them and I didn't read them from a self-help book. I actually stole them from the wisest man who's ever lived. Some of you are like, Elon Musk? No, these weren't from Twitter, okay? This is from a guy named King Solomon, one of the wisest men who ever lived this earth. God appeared to him in a dream and asked him, he's like, hey, I'm gonna give you something, what do you want? And instead of money and fame and riches and glory, he asks for wisdom. Which I think you got to be pretty wise to already ask for that. It's not fair. But so he asked for wisdom, and God gives him wisdom. And then he's like, also, because you asked for something so wise, I'm going to give you a bunch of other stuff too. So this guy was crazy wise. He wrote Proverbs. These guys, which Proverbs will just slap the stupid out of you. It's so incredibly good, and it's so incredibly wise. This guy was a wise counselor. In fact, there's a famous story of two moms who have two kids, and one of the kids had died, one of the kids was alive, and both moms were claiming that they were the mother of the kid that was still alive. And so, there's no DNA tests back then, so they call in the wisest man on earth. They call in King Solomon. And King Solomon's like, okay, I got an idea. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a sword and I'm going to cut the baby in two, and I'm going to give each mom half the baby. Which one of the moms was like, okay, sounds fair. And one of the other moms was like, no, please, like seriously, do not do that. Like just give her the baby. I just want the baby to live. Anything to keep the baby alive. And King Solomon's like, obviously the mom who cares more about the baby is the mom. So the next time your kids are fighting over a toy, you're welcome. You can figure that out, all right? But seriously, this guy was incredibly wise. He had some incredibly wise counsel. He wrote some incredibly wise words. But he didn't live a very wise life. Like this guy, he like this king, he married for money and wealth, and so he could have a foothold in all these other kingdoms, and then they brought all their faiths together, and it actually pulled him away from his faith, and he didn't get like wise counsel around him. In fact, he had a bunch of yes men around him, and at the end of his life, he died with a ton of regret, and his kingdom was so weak that it split in two. This was a guy who knew everything and didn't do it. So some of these principles I'm going to give you today, you're going to be like, I know. Like, seriously, like Dream Center, Nick said, you're going to roll your eyes at me. You're going to be like, I know these things. Cool. Just like I'd tell my son, grab your shoes, put on your coat, grab your lunch. He's like, I know. And I'm like, I know you know, but you don't do it. That's why I'm telling you, okay? And this is as much a reminder for me as it is for you. When we navigate conflict, there are some helpful things that we don't just have to know, we have to do them. And so one of the first things when it comes to conflict that King Solomon writes down in Proverbs 12, he says this, he says, whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but whoever hates correction is stupid. Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but whoever hates correction is, my son would tell me that's a bad word, okay? And I gotta be honest, not a lot of us love the discipline of getting the knowledge, but we want the knowledge. And when I think about it, when I think about like gaining knowledge, who gains the, okay, I'm like, who would you rather be? Would you rather be a student or would you rather be a teacher? And when I think about conflict, a lot of us don't want to be the student. We don't want to learn. We don't want to gain knowledge. We already have the knowledge. We want to be the teacher. We want to lecture. And I've seen a lot of people, when they handle conflict, they are the teacher. They lecture. They're like, I don't understand how you could think this way, and I don't understand how you could believe these things, and I don't understand how you could vote this way, and I don't understand how you could say these things. And I'm like, yeah, who does it seem like doesn't understand? The one who's trying to be the teacher and is not interested in gaining knowledge. They're more interested in giving knowledge. But that's not how it works. In fact, one of the things I wrote down was this, is that it takes one person to make a point, but it takes two people to make peace. It takes one person to make a point. We love making points. And you may have a lot of peace after you make your point, but the person next to you, I can guarantee you they do not. What does it look like, instead of being the teacher and lecturing, what does it look like to be the student? And like, I don't know, what does a student do? How do they gain knowledge? They ask questions. They're curious. They ask really good questions. In fact, one of the interesting things is Jesus in the New Testament, he asked 307 questions. He was an expert question asker. In fact, when people would ask him questions, he'd ask questions back because he realized what's more important is gaining knowledge. I can only see things from my point of view. I can only see things as I am, not as they actually are. So let me ask questions. Let me ask questions, gain knowledge. That's what a student does. That's what's important. You ask really good questions. You want to be more like Jesus? Ask good questions. In fact, one of the other things King Solomon writes is this. He says, the ways of a fool seems right to them, but the wise, they listen to advice. Way of a fool. You want to be a fool? Do what's right to you. Just whatever seems right. The wise, ooh, they do something different. And I think we have a culture that's really obsessed with looking wise. I love looking wise. Like, that's why I put my three-prong approach on why the Chiefs are going to win on social media. I'm like, I want everybody to be like, yeah, how wise is that, right? I like being right because I like people to think, man, you're so wise. I don't like being embarrassed. If you embarrass me, you're dead to me. Why? Because you made me not look so wise. And I think we get so concerned with looking wise that we forget about actually being wise. And those are two different things. And when it comes to wisdom, it's interesting. It says it in this verse, like, but the wise, what do? The wise, they listen. They listen. Several Proverbs talk about this. Even fools are thought wise if they shut their mouth. It says too much talk can lead to sin. The wise keep silent. You are seen wise if you listen. If you listen. In fact, one of the things I wrote down was this, is that there's nothing wrong with feeling wronged. All of us, when we encounter conflict, we are going to feel wronged. But it's what we do with that feeling of feeling wronged that can be wrong. And a lot of times when I'm wronged, what I want to do is tell you how you're wrong. I want to tell you my point of the view, my perspective, through my lens. And you know what I don't want to do? I don't want to listen. One of the helpful things when it comes to conflict that's helped me to listen, and it talks about this, is how can you separate your character from the conflict? For a lot of times we feel like our character is on trial. We're like, no, I need you to understand my point of view. I need you to understand my heart. I need you to understand my intentions, my character. And what's not important is that, like, your character is not on trial. Look at the conflict. Look at the conflict. Listen. Understand their point of view. Understand their heart. It makes an impact. One of the other things King Solomon writes in Proverbs, we keep reading Proverbs 12, he says this. He says, the words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise, they bring healing. Words of the reckless, they pierce like swords. Your words can be poison, they can be perfume, they can be murder, they can be medicine. Your words matter. There's another proverb that talks about careless words. Careless words are like picking up a hot coal and throwing it at your opposition, and it may hit them and it may hurt them, but it's going to burn you in the process. Your words, your reckless words, pierce like swords. But some of your words can bring healing. And so one of the things that I think about is, like, don't say everything you think. And I know that may disorient the male brain. It's like, dude, like, seriously, just because you think it does not mean you have to say it. Listen. And then when you have to respond, and one of the things I wrote down when it comes to responding is this, don't wound two hearts with one cheap shot. Don't do it. It's not worth it. Don't wound two hearts with one cheap shot. And I get it. I love masking, honestly, serious moments with humor, and it's not super helpful, and it doesn't produce the deepest relationships because I feel uncomfortable, but it's important. It's important. Listen, respond. And some of the times when you respond, you need to take a step back. You need to take some time. It's okay to not react. It's okay to not have an answer presented ready after that conversation goes through. It's okay. You can pray about it. Okay, let me think about it. You don't have to respond to that email right away. Write a couple drafts, put it in your notes. Don't send it. Sleep on it. That's okay. How can we respond? In fact, one of the most helpful responses I've heard, it's 2 words. And these 2 words could change a relationship. It's these words, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I mean, I get it. I'm sorry is like peeing in a wetsuit. You really don't want to do it, but after you do it, it's all warm and tingly, and you're like, you know what? It wasn't that bad after all. It's fine. You say, like, I'm sorry. And for some of you, seriously, like, you have never heard those words, I'm sorry. And if you had heard those words in your last marriage, you might still be together. Some of you growing up, you never heard the words, I'm sorry. And if you had, maybe you'd have a better relationship with your parents. Maybe that would have changed the way you looked at love. Maybe that would have changed the way that you parent. Maybe that has changed the way you parent. Some of you have never heard those words, I'm sorry. And what's even sadder is that some of you have never said those words, I'm sorry. And today, your marriage could be completely different if you use those 2 words. Your kids might have a completely different response if you use those 2 words, I'm sorry. And here's what it is, it's uncomfortable. But the question is, how deep do you want your relationships to be? The depth of your relationship is completely tied to how uncomfortable you're willing to get. Seriously, when you say, I'm sorry, you're totally exposed. But it's a big deal. And I used to think, no. The best relationships are when I don't have to say I'm sorry. The best relationships are when I never mess up. The best relationships are the one that are happy, clappy, and they're easy breezy, and we never encounter any conflict, but that's just not the truth. In fact, one of the last things I wrote down is this, is that deep relationships are formed not in spite of conflict, but because of conflict. The deepest relationships you have, they're formed not in spite of conflict. It's because of conflict. So today, what would it look like when you experience conflict? Because all of us are going to. If you said, okay, I bet I have a part to own in that conflict. And you own it. You're like, okay, what percentage? Okay, I'm gonna own that percentage. And you go to them. You take them out to lunch. You're like, hey, I just wanna let you know I've been harboring a lot of anger and bitterness and resentment toward you. And quite honestly, I should have come to you sooner. And I own my part of the conflict. And then I become a student. I'm like, I ask questions. I'm like, what is it like on the other side of me? Well, what is it like living with me? What is it like working with me? And you ask questions and you ask questions. And what do you do then? Instead of talking, you listen and you listen and you ask more questions and you listen and you ask more questions and you listen because you understand I can only see things the way that I am. I need to see things the way that they actually are. And I listen and I listen and I ask more questions and I listen. And then when it comes for a time to respond, I use words like, I'm sorry. And I care about you, that's gonna form some pretty deep relationships in your life. And it's not in spite of conflict, it's probably because you're like the bison and you went into that conflict. In fact, I think about it this way. I got a couple buckets here, and there's a story about a farmer who would use these buckets, and what he would do is every day, he'd use both these buckets, and one of these buckets, he'd take them and he'd go and he'd feed his cattle. He'd give them water, and then he'd come over here and he'd go and he'd water the plants with it. And these two buckets, they were similar, but they're a little different. One of these buckets was this perfect bucket. I mean, it's pretty good, holds a decent amount of water. It's got one job and it does it pretty good. And he'd go over and he'd use it and he'd feed the cattle, right? Give it some water. And then he'd come over here and he'd make sure that the plants get watered. And then he's got this other bucket right here. And this bucket, I mean, it's all right. It's got a few leaks. But he'd use both buckets. And he'd use this leaky bucket and he'd bring it over and he'd go and he'd like come over here, he'd bring it over here, he'd make sure that they get some water, and then he'd bring it over here and he'd come over here and he'd make sure that the plants get watered and whatnot. So he's got these two buckets, and one day, this bucket realized just how leaky it was. And so this bucket was like, I'm gonna ask the farmer, like, why does the farmer still use me? I got one job and I don't even do it very well. And so, yeah, the bucket talks in this story, just go with it, okay? So the bucket asks the farmer, he's like, why, like, seriously, why do you use me? Like, you've got a perfect bucket right here, but you use both of these buckets. And so the farmer's like, hey, why don't you come on a trip with me? And so he comes over, he shows him where he gives water to the cattle. He shows him, he comes over here, he shows him where he gives, waters the plants. And he's like, here's what I want you to do. I want you to look down on this journey. And as he looked down, what he realized is there's a path to each one of these locations where there's lush green vegetation that's grown over the process because there was a bucket that leaked water and ended up feeding all these plants along the process. And the farmer's like, dude, just because you had leaks, you had a purpose all along. And when it comes to conflict, when I think about it, I gotta be honest, I've never felt like this bucket. I've honestly always felt a lot like this bucket. I'm like, I say things and I do things, and I honestly don't say I'm sorry a lot, and I shouldn't, I wanna be better, but I feel a lot like this. In fact, I've got a North Point logo on this. It probably represents a lot of us. We are never going to be perfect in avoiding conflict. In fact, we're going to have a lot of conflict, and we're actually going to do it pretty poorly. But here's what I want you to know. Farmer still wants to use you. Leaks and all. Because it matters. In your weakness, he's going to bring out some really strong relationships. And here's what's going to happen. You're going to feel like this leaky bucket, and you're going to go to your spouse over here. You're going to be like, you're going to use words like, I'm sorry. and you're going to own your part of the conflict, and you're going to listen, and ask questions. What does it look like living with me? What does it look like me being the spouse? And all this time, here's what you're gonna leak. You're gonna leak gentleness and goodness and humility. And all of a sudden, what you're gonna do is you're gonna look down and there's a bunch of water, and that relationship is going to grow. If you wanna be this bucket and you wanna go to your spouse and be like, let me show you all the reasons how you messed up, and let you lecture, and you need to understand my point of view, guess what happens? Nothing in that relationship gets watered. Next time you go with your neighbor and you come over to him, you're like, oh, okay, atmosphere thick with love, tolerate them, do everything in my up to me. I'm gonna try to preserve the unity with us. Okay, here we go. Hey, I want to understand your side of the perspective. I should have been a little nicer about that whole fence ordeal, okay? And the whole time, here's what you're doing. You're leaking humility, gentleness, humbleness, like some good stuff. In fact, if you wanted to, though, you could go over there and you could be right. And you don't need to own a single thing because they're wrong and they're the ones who messed up. The next time you got your kids and they come over, some of you are like, please don't do this again. I'm doing it again. So you're like, you go over by your kids and you're like, see, I don't like the influences that you have, but okay, let me own my part. Hey, I haven't been the best toward you guys. Let me ask questions. I want to get to know you better. Can I make you cookies, right? Like what would that look like to be like, okay, I'm going to be like the bison. I'm going into this conflict. And guess what? The entire time you do this and you listen and what pours out of you is humility and gentleness. And guess what happens? That relationships gets watered. And if you want to be right, well, not a lot happens. So for all of us, when we start to do those things, what's going to happen is we're going to look around days, months, years from now, and we're going to see all of the relationships that have sprouted up and they've grown because we've watered them, because we walked into that conflict, because we handled it well. And my prayer for you is that when you look down, you're going to see some deep-rooted relationships. These things grew. You did it well. You navigated that conflict in a way that makes sense. And some relationships are going to take more watering than others. Some relationships, no matter how much you water, it isn't going to make a difference. And that's okay. Keep handling it well. Keep doing what you're doing. I promise you the right relationships will grow. The wrong ones may not. And that's okay. You're not responsible for the reaction. You're responsible for you and what you do. And when it comes to conflict, man, you may feel like this leaky bucket, but I promise you, if you go back to that conflict, it's going to make a difference. You're going to be watering it. I just believe relationships are going to grow, and they're going to grow very deep in the process. So what I want to do across all of our campuses, I want to pray. I want to pray that we'd be able to not just know this stuff, but we'd be able to put it in action today. Let me pray. Lord, thankful for any opportunity we get. God, I pray that you'd show somebody in our heart that maybe we're not at peace with, and maybe you want us to push in. You want us to handle conflict. And God, I pray you'd give us the boldness and the courage to own that conflict, to walk it out, to the humility to say words that maybe we've never said before, to open and expose our heart. And God, I believe you're going to bless that. And you're going to bring deep, healthy, rooted relationships in our life that maybe we've been avoiding, that now is the time to step in on. I pray that across all of our campuses today. In your name, amen. Amen. Well, hey, one thing I want to walk through before you take off today is at each one of our campuses, you've got these connection cards in your seat or at your table, and I want to walk through that. At each of our campuses, I also want to invite our ushers forward, and on these cards, I challenge you today, whether you're writing down a name of someone that you're not at peace with, whether it's an I will statement of this is what I need to do this week, or maybe it's a prayer request. We want to pray for you. It's such an honor to be able to pray for you each and every week. And I know at each one of our campuses, we want to reach out to you and we want to talk to you. But one thing in particular I want to highlight is on this connection card, there's a spot that says, I will get baptized. And we have baptisms at all of our campuses next weekend. And I talked to a lot of people that mark this or maybe write, hey, I'm interested in baptisms, but I don't know if I'm ready to take that next step. And a lot of the things that I hear are that, hey, I just feel like I need to fix some things. Hey, I feel like I'm not all put together. I just need to be better before I make this next step. And I just want to remind you that we are all this bucket. And God can use your weakness. There's nothing you need to clean up. In fact, when it comes to baptisms, it's kind of the opposite. Anytime you say baptisms, what it is a declaration of I can't do this on my own. And God, I need your help. Please, you're the leader of my life. And now I publicly am proclaiming that. Let's walk in that. So if you've been wrestling with baptisms on whether or not that's the next step, I encourage you to step into that, push into that. This is an opportunity for God to use your weakness. Right? And so I know at each one of our campuses, we'd love to reach out to you as well. It's also our opportunity to give. And if it is your first time here, I want to say no pressure to give. We've got these connection cards. If you could mark that first time guest box, what we'll do is make a donation in your honor to a local nonprofit. So I think that's pretty cool. And we link arms with some amazing community partners who are truly, whether it's clothing the naked or feeding the poor or caring for those in need, whether that's Least of These or Care to Learn or the Dream Center or Council Church of the Ozark. We've got some phenomenal organizations that bring a lot of health in our community, and your giving is making an impact in that. So thank you. Ushers at all of our campuses, we can go and pass those buckets. We can drop our cards, our giving in those buckets, and while we do that, I want to check out a quick story from our Dream Center campus. And this is a powerful story of baptisms and community and how those both played a part to an pretty important next step. Let's check it out.
My name is Sean Morris, and I go to the Dream Center. My household was run by mental health and addiction. My mom had a lot of mental health issues, and that did not bode well for children in the household. So at this point, I'm just floating through life, trying to be a good parent, trying to be a good husband. Not sure how good I was doing, but I was trying. And then my wife said, I used to go to church all the time when I was younger. I mean, because she knows what I went through. She knows everything about me. And so she never gave up on me, which means that in my mind, I kind of owed her, and she wanted to go to church. So I signed up for a men's group. It was Authentic Manhood. As I was going and as I was listening to, the teachings every week, I noticed that I was starting to open up more, opening my heart, not just to God, but to everybody. That's the thing. I'm opening my heart to God and letting Him take charge. But I'm also tearing down walls that I've had up forever. And when I got the chance to show the world, hey, this is who I am now. If this can work for me, this can work for anybody. If God can tear down my walls, God can tear down any walls. And I want to just show everybody that. So that's why I got baptized.
Well, looks like someone got baptized right here.
I agree.
There's a lot of water.
Bro, Preston.
Listen, we did not plan.
I promise you, we did not plan this.
Look. That's like
Yes,
anytime
thank you.
Terrell dresses like me, I know he did something right. No, I did something right.
Yeah, okay. Hey, and Preston, you know what's so funny about this? So what the young folks say, 'cause we got our student leadership team right here. Yeah,
Okay.
shout out high school team. What they call this when you dress really nice is drip.
Drip.
Yes, drip. So like they would say, you're dripping right now.
I'm super dry.
Yeah, right. Okay, so I just want to let you know that when you take a step over here, I don't want you to slip in your drip.
Terrell.
Is that good? That's good.
It sounds like a song. Don't slip in your drip.
Yeah, like
I'm worried I'm gonna slip. Does John not know about tarps?
I don't know.
Well, hey, we'll get you out of here soon. I'm super concerned about the stage, but we'll get you out of here soon. Oh, just a few things. There's some great ways to connect. You've been hearing this video talks about groups. There's I think there's about 50 groups here in Springfield that you can get plugged into. There's groups online. There's some of those groups are in the lobby, but groups launch the week of February 18th. So groups meet at different times throughout the week. There's different types of groups. I just encourage you, if you want to get connected, jump in one of those groups.
Yeah.
And students have groups too.
Yeah, so every Sunday morning we have our middle school groups that are led by high school leaders and young adults, which is just really amazing. And on Wednesday nights is when we have our high school groups after service. And then we even have a group right here of, there we go, yep, clap. So this is our high school leadership team, juniors and seniors, and this is just a great community for them to grow together. And then next week we have students taking next steps in their faith and going public with it. Yes, with baptism.
Which could be right here or right there. But
Either
next
spot.
week they're going to be right there. Baptisms is a big deal at North Point. There is a type of group that if you're exploring what it means to follow Jesus, for people that just get baptized, or if you're like, I don't even know if I want to get baptized, but you just want to explore, the group's called Foundations.
Yeah.
Going through foundational things like, who is Jesus? What is the Bible? Just these key concepts. So anyway, groups, baptism, next steps, and be careful where you step.
You be careful where you step. And later today, Chiefs.
Yeah, that's not a group. I mean, if you're not rooting for the Chiefs, you're.
But I
in
think
your
we're
own
going to be
group.
in a group celebrating and winning.
Well, we will, unless they're not celebrating the Chiefs.
Okay,
Either way, we hope you have a great day. One of the teams will win today, okay? So whoever you're cheering for, well, that's not true either. Just go outside, go out there, let's get some popcorn. We got pictures with Taylor Swift cut out. She made it all the way from Tokyo.
All right, see you next week.